Hello folks, my name is John East and I'm going to be talking about spinning yarn on a Saxony type spinning wheel. And this spinning wheel is made, it's called a Schott Reeves because it was made by a company that was owned by Mr. Schott and Mr. Rick Reeves. And it is a Saxony type, which means it's the wheel with a bed, and then it's got the mother of all, this bar across here, and the maidens that are standing up straight here, which supports the flower, which is this U-shaped part right here that's got the hooks on it. And the bobbin then is on the flyer, and it is what the yarn goes on as it is spun. And this band drives both the flyer and the bobbin, but it drives the flyer faster than the bobbin, and this is called double drive, and this makes the yarn wind up on the bobbin because the flyer is going faster than the bobbin. Well, the bobbin is going faster than the flyer, I'm sorry. Okay, and what it looks like when it's running is this. And as we spin, it comes out, the yarn comes out of the orifice hole and is guided on to the flyer and then eventually winds up on the bobbin. And what we're after is to get yarn onto this bobbin that's made of wool. This is a piece of roving. It is merino wool that has been dyed different colors and then carded out or pulled out, combed out into a prepared wool for spinning. And what I'm going to be doing is showing the initial process of spinning this wool roving into a single thread of yarn, and it will wind up on this bobbin and look like this. And to do this, we have what is called a leader, which is used to get the roving started. And to do this, we take a little bit of the roving, we pull it out, which is called drafting it out, and we form a loop on the end of this leader, like so, and put this roving through it, and pull the leader down onto the roving. And this attaches the roving and the leader together. Now, when we start spinning, we will be drafting out or pulling out this wool from the roving in a manner that will give us the size single yarn that we need. At the same time, since it is attached to the spinning wheel, and as the flyer is going down around, it's carrying this thread around and around and it's putting a twist in it. And while it's doing that, it is also, because the bobbin is trying to turn faster than the flyer, it will keep the yarn wound up onto the bobbin. And what I'm doing is referred to as drafting it out, and it's a long draw method in that I'm pulling the yarn out and letting the twist get up into my roving and twist before it ever comes out. Now I'm showing you what is called a short forward draft, where if you see what I'm doing, I'm pulling a little bit out at a time and trying to keep the twist from getting back into my roving. And this gives you a little bit of the different texture of the yarn. And as I spin this, if my photographer will come in and get a close-up of, or zoom in and get a close-up of this yarn that is being produced and is wound up on the bobbin here, right here in this little knot. As it winds up, I move the yarn over on another hook, and that moves it and lays it out on the bobbin spool. That color, that was not a good piece of wool to be putting in this yarn because it was a little bit too bright blue. But what I'm doing now is the short forward draft. Sort of like an inchworm. It's very slow, and I'm fixing to go back into the long draw, and you'll see how fast this makes yarn as compared to that short forward draw. See how much yarn comes out of there. It's not like you're having to pull it out a piece at a time. It comes out in good long pieces, and then we'll just run toward the spinning wheel and let it wind up. And that's about it for today, because what we got to do is spend a few hours sitting here spinning and getting a full bobbin. And when we get that, we'll add on to the video of what we do to make a 2-ply yarn by applying these 2 bobbins of singles into one, and we will wind up with this kind of yarn. This would be a 2-ply. If you'll look, the reason we call it 2-ply, when I untwist it, you can see that that is the 2 singles that's been twisted together to make a 2-ply rather than a single ply yarn. If anyone is interested while I'm sitting here spinning and making this yarn and wondering how an old man like me wound up doing this, well, I'll have to tell you, I've got a wife that wanted to have a spinning wheel, and I didn't know it, and she told me that she'd been wanting one for 20 years. So back, well, about 2019 or somewhere along there, I took her to Chattanooga and she bought her a spinning wheel, and we brought it to this house, and these spinning wheels have multiplied. But we have learned a little bit about spinning, and I have actually got into weaving some of this yarn up. Maybe one day I'll make a video of how I weave it into shawls or hats or whatever. But I got into it to help my wife get to know how to spin, and she does a good job of it. But I took up another habit. Actually, most of my hobbies wound up as a result of helping her get into a hobby that she wants to be in and helping her learn it. So I've been into raising orchids and doing photography, spinning. She used to run a craft shop. I did sewing machine mechanicing for her. So we've been into a lot of stuff during our years together, and it's all been enjoyable. So we've had a good life of having hobbies. Everybody needs to have hobbies. Now I say hobbies, you don't need just one. That gets tiresome. If you move around, you can have a lot of hobbies and a lot of fun. Go places with your hobbies and you meet people that are hobbyists like you are. And you go to fiber shows or Fiber Fest and learn about different kind of fibers that you can spin and weave. And you get into orchids, you go to orchid shows and meet a lot of good people. If you do photography, you can go around to photography workshops and meet a lot of people that do the same thing in photography that you're trying to do. After about an hour's worth of spinning, we wound up with a full bobbin of single ply yarn on this bobbin. And what we're going to do now is to take this bobbin off of the spinning wheel and use it and ply it with this bobbin that has been previously spun, and we're going to ply it together to make a 2-ply yarn, which will look like this when we're through with it. Okay, and to show you what's going on with plying, I'm going to pull some of this single yarn off the spinning wheel with this orifice hook, which I'm going to use as a weight. I'm going to hook it onto this yarn and fold it double, and that gives me 2 plies. And when I turn the plies loose, they will twist and become one piece of yarn with 2 plies, 2 single plies. And what we're going to do now is to take this bobbin off of the spinning wheel, and we're going to take it and we're going to ply it with this other bobbin that has been previously done to create our 2-ply yarn. So let's see what we got to do to get this bobbin off of the spinning wheel. We have to just spin it up and let the end go in. Now we can take and turn. This is called the mother of all. And these 2 posts standing up here are the maidens. These are old names for parts of spinning wheels. So we're going to turn this maiden so that this leather bearing will come off the end of the flower shaft. Then we're going to hold our 2 drive bands and take them off of the pulleys that are on the back of the flower and the bobbin. Each bobbin has on it, as you can see here, a pulley that drives it with one of these bands. The other band fits on the whorl that is screwed onto the shaft of the flyer. The flyer is this piece, U-shaped piece that's got the hooks on it. And we will take this whorl off of the flyer and pull the bobbin off. Now we've got our 2 bobbins of single yarn that we can use. And I'm going to put the whorl back on and put the bands back on the whorl on the flyer whorl, and put it back in place so my bands don't get away from it. And now we will take these 2 bobbins and we will set them up to do the plying on another spinning wheel. What we're going to do now is we're going to put the bobbins of yarn on this device here, which is known as a Lazy Kate, and it will hold 3 bobbins, so you can apply 3 singles, but we're going to only use 2. And the purpose of the Lazy Kate is to hold the bobbin, and it also has a string band here, we call it a brake band, that rides in the groove on this bobbin. And what it does, I'm going to show you, I'm going to put it on here without the band on it, and you see how it spins freely. Now if I put the band up on the pulley, and it won't let me make that spin, so it keeps a tension, a back tension on the yarn as you're applying it. So we're going to put these 2 bobbins on the Lazy Kate with the brake bands in the groove, and neither one of them will turn freely. Like this. I think I'll just use this one over here. This brake is adjustable with this little black knob right here. You turn it to the right clockwise and it will tighten the band. The band is also keeps tension by virtue of a spring here. You take the ends on the bobbin and you thread them through the guides. Can you see the guide? Yes, you can see the guide. When we get it threaded up, everybody doesn't have a chair to do their plying with like this, but it really makes a good place to put your Lazy Kate because your yarn pulls against it with tension, and we've got the 2 ends tied together here, threaded through the guides and across this chair rail, and we're going to fasten them together. And we stretch this out over to a chair over here on the other side of the room. Stretch the yarn out like this is that when you're spinning it, you don't always get the same amount of twist in the yarn, and by stretching it this far, it lets it have a chance for this twist to equalize along the yarn, so it's not all piled up in one place or lacking in a place. Okay, so now we're ready to sit down and start plying using this machine. This is a Revolution spinning wheel. That's the brand name of it. It's a Castle type, and the reason I use it for plying my yarn is that it has this great big bobbin on it, and by using it, it gives me room for a lot of yarn to be plied at one time. And it has a leader on it, just like we've seen on the other one. And it gets threaded up through a single sliding hook rather than moving from hook to hook. To move this along the bobbin, you just squeeze it and slide it along. So that's called a sliding hook. We'll start off, and we got it threaded. Then this spinning wheel has got an orifice. You see the little orifice hook right here coming through? That's to get this leader and pull it through the orifice. And that lets the yarn come from here and down and out without twisting all around the bobbin. So now we've got the leader. Now when we spin, we would be spinning in this direction here. And that puts the twist in the single yarn. But now we're going to be twisting two pieces of yarn together to make a 2-ply, and you have to do that by twisting it in the opposite direction from what it was spun. So we're actually going backwards now. Okay, now to get started, we'll take these 2 pieces of yarn that we tied together. We'll make a loop in the leader, like so, and we'll put that knot in it and pull that loop down. And now we've got the 2 plies of yarn tied to the leader. And then we will start to ply it. And we remember I said we're going in the reverse direction. And as we're applying, we're putting two strands together and letting it go on. And we're not really putting a lot of twist in this, but we're just letting it twist around itself and putting a little extra twist in it. If you'll notice, if you'll come up and look right here, if you'll notice that this yarn that's laying on the bobbin here is 2 strands twisted together. And if you look back here before it goes onto the bobbin, where it has gotten twisted. So we're just pulling out about 1 foot. When I pull back about 1 foot, I try to make about 2 petals, and that gives me an equal twist in the yarn as it's plied. We run this through my hand to keep a little tension, to make the plies lay together straight. And also I get a feel of whether I've got any extra yarn or twist in a place in the yarn where I can stop and get it out so it won't wind up in the finished 2-ply. So it gives me a little chance to inspect what we're putting together. Just like right there. I got a little bit of extra twist in this one right here. What I'll do is I'll untwist it a little bit and then let it ply together. Then when the yarn gets built up on the bobbin a bit, we can take our sliding hook and move it over. I don't know whether I mentioned it, but this spinning wheel is a castle type spinning wheel, which means it goes straight up with the orifice and the bobbin over the wheel rather than setting out to one side of it. It's just another way that spinning wheels have been made over the years. This is a Revolution brand made and sold by Paradise Fibers Company. Now, it's going to take a little while for me to get this plied, so when we get it plied, we'll go through the further process. Okay, the next process of making yarn out of fiber is that we're going to wind the 2-ply yarn off of this bobbin that we plied it onto, and we're going to fasten the end of it to this device that is called a Niddy-Noddy. Niddy-Noddy. a niddy knotty. And what we're going to do is wind it onto this niddy knotty, and then we will tie it up a little bit and take it off and take it and wash it in medium warm water to set the twist in it and to be sure that it's clean for the next process. So here's where we go. We say, we go around that one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. And I guess that the reason they call it a niddy knotty is that there was probably a little song that they sang in the old days of saying, niddy knotty, niddy knotty, niddy knotty, niddy knotty, and kind of keep a little tempo. Actually, back in the old days, probably in the old world, back in Ireland and the English islands and most everywhere, people had to spin yarn and weave it to have clothes to wear. So they had to make their own equipment. They had to come up with their own ways of doing things. And I've seen quite a few places where people were using that equipment and actually singing as they did it. So maybe music gives them a beat or a tempo. I really like to have music when I'm doing spinning myself. You be able to set a tempo and make more uniform yarn by doing that. Okay, we've got this almost on the niddy knotty. Then we'll take it over here on the table and tie it up and take it off, and it will look just exactly like the other skein of yarn that I showed you when we started. Here we are at the end. We'll take it off the leader. Okay, we've got our 2-ply yarn on the niddy knotty, and we're going to secure it so we can take it off and it won't just become a mangled mess of mess. So we just take, and on one corner, we take it and we tie it with, just loosely, with a piece of scrap yarn. And then we go around the niddy knotty to this corner, and we put a tie on it. Then we go up around this corner and we put a tie on it here. And this puts 4 ties on it equal distance apart. Then we turn it up, we come up and go around this corner and we tie it right here. So let's put four ties on it equal distance apart. And that will hold it while we wash it, and it will keep it separated till we get ready to ball it up so that we can weave with it. We release the catch on the niddy knotty, and that lets the niddy knotty slide up and become shorter. We just take the skein of yarn off of it, and that's a perfect plied skein of yarn because it doesn't have any twist to it. If it was over twisted, when I turned it loose, it would have done like this. And that's a sign of having over twist, but you see how it wants to take and just the twist come out of it. So there is our second skein of this particular 2-ply yarn. It looks like it's might be fairly good for handmade yarn. I don't like a perfect yarn. I could go to Hobby Lobby and buy perfect yarn all the time. But this has got the handmade look.